The door to the cell slid open with a heavy sound. Jace looked up from the cold floor, his back pressed against the wall. He was used to this place. He had stopped counting the days, but what came next was not normal. 2 armored alien guards stepped in, their black eyes glowing. Between them was a girl, small, thin, chained from neck to ankles. She stumbled as they pushed her forward. "This one's your punishment," one of the guards hissed. "She belongs to you now." The girl didn't speak. Her skin was pale silver, her long hair tangled and falling over her face. She didn't cry, didn't resist, just stood still like a shadow. The guards left without a word. The cell door slammed shut. Jace and the girl were alone. Silence filled the room like smoke. Jace stood slowly, raising his hands to show he had no weapons. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said softly. The girl didn't move, didn't even blink. She watched him with hollow eyes like a creature who had forgotten what safety meant. He pointed to the bed, the only one in the cell. "You can take it, I'll sleep on the floor." Still no response. Jace sighed and stepped back. Sitting near the wall again, she stayed by the door like she expected someone to come and beat her for breathing wrong. Hours passed. The station lights outside the cell dimmed, signaling night. She hadn't spoken, hadn't eaten, hadn't even sat down. Jace unwrapped a small ration bar and placed it near her feet. She didn't touch it. He didn't force her, just went back to his side and closed his eyes. In the silence, he could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. He knew that sound. Fear. This wasn't the first time they had done something like this, but it was the first time they had given him a person, not a threat, not a spy. A girl, young and broken. He wanted to ask why. What crime did she commit? But he could see the answer written on her body, scars, burns, marks of collars that didn't fit right. The next morning, Jace woke up to find her sitting in the corner, holding the ration bar with shaking hands. She hadn't eaten it yet, just stared at it like it might explode. "It's safe," he said gently. "It's not much, but it won't kill you." She looked at him then. Really looked. Her eyes were large and dark blue, almost too big for her face. He saw the question there. Why are you being kind? But she said nothing. Just took the smallest bite, then another, like she had forgotten what food tasted like. Jace leaned back and let her eat in peace. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to touch her. He knew trust didn't come easy, not for someone like her. Later she moved to the bed but only sat on the edge, still not sleeping, still watching, as if kindness was the real trap, as if she expected the pain to come any second. Jace remembered something the guard had said. She was a royal guard once. Now she's trash. He looked at her again. The way she sat straight even in fear. The way she kept her hands close, ready to protect herself. She wasn't weak. She was trained to be strong, and then thrown away when she refused to follow cruel orders. That night, he placed the blanket over her shoulders while she stared at the floor. She flinched at his touch but didn't pull away. He didn't speak, didn't explain, just sat back down and waited. The next day, she said her first words, a whisper, rough and unused. "Why?" Jace looked at her and shrugged. "Because you deserve better." She stared at him like he had just told her the stars were made of fireflies, something too strange to believe. But that one word, "why," was a crack in the wall she had built, a small opening. And Jace knew this wasn't about saving her. This was about giving her the choice to save herself. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know what they would do if they saw her smiling. But he knew one thing. They gave her to him as punishment, but she wasn't the one being punished anymore. The cell was silent, but her mind was not. Zairi sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. She had eaten only half the food the human gave her. Her body wanted sleep, but her mind screamed at her to stay awake. She had been passed around before, punished, mocked, trained to obey. But this was different. This man, this human, was not like the others. He had not shouted, not touched her, not demanded anything. He had even given her the blanket, without a word. She waited for the trick, the moment when he would show his true self. But it never came. Across the room, Jace lay on the floor, his arms behind his head, his eyes closed. He wasn't pretending to be asleep. He truly had no fear of her, no chains on her, no lock on the bed. She could run if there was anywhere to run, but there wasn't. Ziri reached up and touched the blanket gently. Soft, warm, real. She pulled it tighter around herself. A strange feeling began to rise in her chest. Not fear, not hate. Something else, something dangerous. Hope. She closed her eyes just for a moment. The bed was soft beneath her. Her muscles ached from standing too long. Her back still hurt from old beatings. But for the first time in a long time, no one was shouting. No one was hurting her. And then, a sound. Ziri's eyes flew open, heart pounding. Her body was ready to fight. But it was just him, Jace, turning in his sleep, muttering something, a name maybe, or a memory. He looked peaceful, almost gentle, so strange for a human. She watched him until her own eyes grew heavy. Then, for the first time since she had been captured, Ziri slept. The next morning, the lights turned bright without warning. Ziri woke with a jolt, hand already reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Old habits. She looked around, still in the same cell, still the same human, still safe. Jace sat up and stretched with a yawn. "Morning," he said casually, like they were just roommates and not prisoners on a war station. Ziri didn't respond. She wasn't sure if he expected her to, but he didn't seem to mind the silence. He walked to the small food slot in the wall and pressed a button. A second ration bar came out. He took one and tossed the other toward her gently. Not a threat, not a command, an offer. She caught it and nodded once. Her first real answer. He smiled, and that scared her more than anything else because it was warm. "Feel any better?" he asked. Ziri hesitated, then answered. "A little." Her voice was still dry, unused, but it was stronger than before. Jace sat down, back against the wall again. He didn't stare at her, didn't ask questions. He just talked. He told her about Earth, about the food he missed, about his sister who used to make terrible coffee. Ziri didn't understand all the words, but the tone was clear. He was trying to share, and that made something twist in her chest. No one had shared with her before. Not since, no, she wouldn't think about the past. Not now. She looked at him and asked, "Why are you here?" Jace raised his eyebrows. "Oh, that's a long story," he said. "Short version. I didn't follow orders either." Ziri blinked. "You disobeyed?" He nodded. "I refused to kill a ship full of kids." Didn't sit well with command? She stared at him, unsure if he was lying, but his face was calm, honest, tired, too tired to fake something so deep. For a moment their eyes met. Two prisoners, two rebels, one human, one alien, but maybe not so different after all. "I was a guard," Ziri said quietly. "I refused to kill a child." Silence again. Not awkward this time, not cold, just real. "Well," Jace said with a small grin, "guess we both got punished for doing the right thing." Ziri looked away, but she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him, not of kindness. That night, she sat beside the bed, not on it. Jace lay on the floor again, arms behind his head. Before sleeping, she asked, "Why do you sleep on the ground?" He opened one eye and replied, "Because I don't own you." Her breath caught. Those words hit harder than any strike she had ever taken. She lay down on the bed slowly, her back still sore, but her heart a little lighter, and as the lights dimmed again, Ziri whispered something no one had heard from her in years. "Thank you." Ziri waited until the human turned away. Only then did she pull the blanket aside and slip her shirt over her shoulder. The air in the cell was cold, but not as cold as what she felt inside. She stared at the faded marks on her skin, some long and curved, others small and deep, each one a memory, a warning, a punishment. She never showed them to anyone, not even herself, unless she had to. But now, Jace had seen, accidentally, quietly. And worse, he had not looked away in disgust. He hadn't flinched, hadn't asked, hadn't stared. He had just nodded once, then turned around again like it meant nothing. And somehow, that meant everything. Ziri sat back down slowly, pulling, her shirt up again. Her heartbeat was still fast, not from fear, but from something she couldn't name. Jace broke the silence. "I used to know someone who had scars like that," he said softly, not looking at her. "A friend from Earth? People said she looked ruined, but I thought she looked like survival." Ziri turned her head, not sure if she was ready to reply, but her voice came anyway. "They hurt me because I disobeyed. They said I broke the order." Jace tilted his head slightly, still not looking. "What did you do?" "I refused." "To kill a child," Ziri whispered. "A small one crying in a tunnel. They said it was a rebel's offspring, a threat. But it was just a child." Jace closed his eyes. He had heard similar stories. On Earth, on outposts, in wars he never wanted to fight. "They chained me," Ziri continued. "Burned my rank, tore my badge. They said I was no longer a protector. But they were wrong," Jace said, finally meeting her eyes. "You protected the only one that mattered." For a moment, the cell didn't feel so cold. Ziri looked down. "You didn't ask about the scars." "I didn't need to," he answered. "They already told me the story." The next few days passed quietly, but something had changed between them. Ziri began to move differently, less like a prisoner, more like herself. She started to clean the bed, fold the blanket. She walked around the cell, checking corners, tracing lines. Jace watched her closely. "You're scanning the room like a soldier," he said with a smile. "I thought you were done fighting." "I don't know," she replied. "But my hands remember." She flexed her fingers, scarred but steady. "I was a commander once in the northern barracks. They trusted me. Then they broke that trust because I followed my own heart." "That's not failure," Jace said. "That's bravery." Ziri didn't reply, but she stood taller. After that one night she woke to the sound of Jace groaning in his sleep. His face was tight, his body tense. She stepped closer, unsure. He mumbled something, words from a dream, then a single name. "Mina." Ziri paused. "Is she someone you lost?" she asked gently. Jace opened his eyes slowly. His breath was shallow, his voice low. "My sister," he said. "They took her during a raid on the outer colony. I never found her." Ziri knelt beside him. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he whispered. "You remind me of her. Not in the way you look, in the way you fight." She didn't know how to answer that, so she simply sat with him in silence. And for the first time, they didn't feel like two strangers in a cell. They felt like something more. Survivors with a shared fire. The next morning, Jace tore a piece from his shirt and began wiping the grime off the wall near the vent. Ziri raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" "Measuring," he said. "Air flows better here. Means there's something behind it." She walked over and touched the vent with her fingers. "It connects to the cargo bay," she said. "I remember the air pattern." Jace smiled. "I knew you were useful." "I'm dangerous," Ziri replied with a smirk. "Useful comes later." And in that moment, something cracked. Not in their cell, but in Ziri's soul. For the first time since she was thrown into this nightmare, she laughed, a short, dry, broken laugh, but a real one. Jace stared at her, then laughed too. And for a second, the prison walls felt less like a cage and more like the beginning of something else. Ziri sat beside him later, her voice quiet. "I don't want to hide anymore." "You won't have to," he said. "Not while I'm here." And she believed him. Not because he promised, but because he never asked her to prove she deserved kindness. He gave it freely, and that was the first real freedom she'd felt in years. The lights dimmed in the hallway outside their cell. The evening cycle had begun on the station, but sleep didn't come easily anymore. Not for Ziri. Not since she started hearing whispers through the vents. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cold metal wall, her senses alert, trained like they used to be. Every vibration, every breath of air through the grate. She felt it. Jace was lying on the floor, using a rolled-up shirt as a pillow. He looked asleep, But Ziri had learned he was never fully at rest. Not here, not while she was with him. He protected her without chains, without orders, and that made her feel something she couldn't explain. But now there was something else. A tension in the air, a quiet warning. The whispers came again, low and sharp. Ziri stood up silently and crossed to the vent. She pressed her ear to the cool wall and listened. "She talks now," said a voice. "Sits on the bed like she owns it. The human is infecting her," another voice growled. She was supposed to break, not heal. Ziri's chest tightened. They were watching her, watching him, judging every move, every smile, every breath. "She's dangerous if she remembers who she was." One hissed. "If he reminds her, we lose control." There was silence, then one final word. "Eliminate." Ziri stepped back from the vent, her breathing shallow. The word echoed in her ears like a blade drawn in the dark. She looked at Jace, still lying still pretending to sleep, still her only ally in a world full of watchers. The next morning she didn't wait. She walked straight to Jace and crouched beside him. "They're going to kill you," she whispered. His eyes opened slowly. No surprise, no panic, only quiet understanding. "Why?" he asked. "Because I gave you a blanket?" Ziri shook her head. "They said you're making me dangerous. They're afraid of what I might become." Jace sat up and rubbed his neck. "Well," he said with a small smile. "They should be." Ziri blinked. He wasn't joking. He meant it. "You're not broken," Jace continued. "They think they erased you, but I see the truth. You're still there, Ziri. The real you." Her lips parted. Her breath caught. He said her name like it mattered, like she mattered. "I don't want you to die," she said finally. Her voice small, real. "I won't," he answered, "because we're getting out." That evening, Jace pulled the floor mat aside. From beneath a loose tile, he revealed a small sharp shard, part of a tray edge he'd been shaping for weeks. Ziri stared. "You were planning escape before me." "Always," he said with a grin. "Just never had a reason worth risking it for." Ziri didn't smile, but something behind her eyes softened. "I'm not a reason," she said. "You're the reason," he replied. They started mapping the vents together. Ziri used her training to count air pulses and heat cycles. Jace tracked guard steps and drone movement patterns through the cracks in the wall. Every day they acted normal. A quiet girl and a tired human, but every night they became soldiers again, planning, timing, waiting. Their fingers would touch sometimes while drawing lines on the wall with food wrappers. Neither of them pulled. "Away?" On the third night, a guard passed their door and paused. Ziri tensed. Jace stopped moving. The guard leaned in close to the window and sneered. "You look too comfortable," he said. "Maybe we should remind you what this place is." Ziri stood slowly, her expression unreadable. "I remember," she said quietly. "I just stopped. Being afraid?" The guard narrowed his eyes, then walked away. But the threat remained. When the door sealed again, Jace exhaled. "They're coming soon," he said. "Then we leave sooner." Ziri replied, "No more waiting." That night, she lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Jace lay beside the wall, his arm behind his. "Head, I heard what they called me," she whispered suddenly. "Pet tool waste." Jace didn't speak, he just waited. "But you call me Ziri," she continued. "And that's the only thing that feels real." He sat up, eyes locked with hers. "You are real," he said. "And when we leave this place, the galaxy will know it." She turned her face toward him, and, for the first time, didn't hide her scars, didn't hide her fear, didn't hide herself, and he saw all of her, and stayed. Ziri stood at the edge of the cell, eyes locked on the metal vent above the sink. She didn't blink, didn't speak. She was listening. Every hiss of air, every small click in the wall, every breath of the station's old machine heart. Jace was drawing something on the floor with a sharp stone edge. Lines, circles, notes, and symbols they both understood. "The escape path. It opens once every 8 days," he whispered. "The supply drones pass through the lower shaft at cycle. Shift." Ziri knelt beside him. That's 2 nights from now. Exactly, he said. But after what you heard through the vent, we can't wait for perfect. She nodded slowly, her fingers curled into a fist. I'd rather die running than let them tear you from this cell. Jace glanced up at her. You're not protecting me, he said, not alone. She looked at him then, really looked, even with his messy hair, bruised knuckles, and tired eyes. He stood like someone who hadn't given up, and something inside her clicked. Not duty, not training. Something deeper. Trust. That night. They made the final decisions. Ziri mapped the guard rotations by counting the shadow patterns under the door. Jace tracked the temperature shifts in the wall. The heat vents would help them mask their movement. They shared food quietly, breaking the bar in 2. 1 half for her, 1 for him. It wasn't about hunger anymore. It was ritual. You ever done anything this reckless before? Jace asked, trying to lighten the mood. Ziri raised an eyebrow. I once punched a warlord during a ceremony. Jace blinked, then laughed. Remind me not to upset you. She didn't laugh, but she didn't deny it. Her lips twitched, and for him, that was enough. The next morning, something changed. A new guard came by, unfamiliar face, colder eyes. He didn't say anything, just stared through the glass at Ziri like she was an animal in a cage. Ziri stepped back slowly, but not in fear. She was calculating. When the guard left, Jace whispered, That one wasn't here before. They're watching closely now, she said. We don't have 2 nights. We move tonight, Jace said without hesitation. Ziri didn't argue. She stood, adjusted the blanket she wore like a cloak, and went to work. That night, the light dimmed early. A trick. Jace felt it immediately. They want to see what? We'll do, he muttered. Ziri had already removed the last bolt from the vent. With a food tray corner, she sharpened herself. It clinked quietly into her palm. She held it like a weapon. They waited in silence for 20 minutes. No alarms. No motion, just darkness. Then Jace gave a small nod. She climbed up first, her muscles moving like liquid shadow. She reached back for him. He climbed after her, his leg still bruised but steady. In the tight space above the ceiling, it was hot, narrow, and full of dust. They crawled in silence, inch by inch. Every metal groan felt like thunder in the quiet. Ziri paused at a junction. She pointed. Left went to the cargo shafts. Right went to the drone bay. Left is faster, she whispered. But riskier. I follow you, Jace said without doubt. They moved left. Down below, the hallway was still. No footsteps, no voices. But something felt wrong. Then, an alarm. Not loud, not red, just a soft click in the vent system. They know, Ziri breathed. They saw something. Keep moving, Jace said, his voice low, urgent. They reached the access panel above the drone hallway. Ziri pushed it gently. It opened with a creak. Below them, a cargo drone floated slowly through the tunnel, carrying boxes unguarded. That's our ride, Jace said. Wait for the timing. Ziri nodded. They dropped together, landing softly on the back of the drone. Jace winced as his foot hit metal hard, but stayed silent. Ziri pressed a small cable into the side of the drone. She rewired its direction toward the emergency bay. It'll trigger a door, she said. Only once. Then we don't miss it, he said. The drone passed through the tunnel. The door ahead opened, and the cold wind of open space bit through the hallway. Ziri jumped first, landing near the pod crates. Jace followed. But behind him, the door slammed too fast. Ziri turned in panic. He was stuck, his foot caught in the sliding door. She grabbed. Him pulled hard. He bit down on his own hand to stay quiet as his leg scraped through. They rolled into the cargo chamber just as the final alarm began to rise. Now, she shouted. They ran for the escape pod, slammed the button. The door shut behind them, and the pod launched into black space. Inside, silence. Then their eyes met, and Ziri whispered, We made it. Jace leaned back. For now. And Ziri, for the first time, smiled without pain. But outside, the red lights on a distant ship began to glow. The chase wasn't over. The pod shot into space like a spark from a dying star. Ziri clutched the handles beside her. Seat. Her breath shallow, Jace sat across from her, pale, blood slowly soaking through the torn cloth wrapped around his leg. He gave her a weak grin. Still breathing, he said. But I think the station's mad we left without saying goodbye. Ziri didn't smile. She reached for the med pack in the wall unit and dropped to her knees beside him. This wound is deep, she said. I told you not to jump with that leg. Didn't want to miss the flight, he replied, wincing. She didn't laugh, but her touch softened as she wrapped the gauze. Outside, the stars blinked like eyes watching their escape. But peace didn't last. The pod's console flashed red. Ziri's head snapped up, reading the display. Incoming signal, she whispered. Tracking beacon locked. Jace tried to sit up but groaned. They tagged the pod before launch. Ziri slammed her hand against the panel. Can we cut it off? No, he replied. Not without landing. Ziri scanned the local star map, a frozen moon nearby, atmosphere thin but survivable, rough, unmarked, forgotten. There, she said, pointing. We'll drop into the shadow zone. Mask. Our heat. Jace nodded. Let's vanish. But the station wasn't giving up. A sleek hunter ship appeared behind them, black as space, sharp as a blade. It fired a warning pulse, rocking the pod. We don't have weapons. Jace muttered. We don't need weapons, Ziri said. We have desperation. She grabbed the pod's manual controls, jerking them sharply. The pod spun into a tight dive toward the icy moon. The hunter followed, scanning, targeting. Inside the pod, systems blinked and screamed. Fire burst from the side panel, smoke filled the chamber. Ziri kept her hands firm on the stick, her eyes locked on the moon. Jace coughed, reaching for the fire suppressor. He sprayed the smoke, his body shaking from pain. We're going in hot, Ziri growled. Brace for impact. The pod slammed into the moon's surface with a howl of metal and flame. It bounced once, twice, then skidded across ice and crashed against a jagged hill of frozen stone. Everything went still. For a second, only silence, then movement. Ziri groaned and sat up, blood trickling down her temple. She crawled to Jace's side. He was alive, barely conscious, Jace, she whispered, shaking him. He blinked slowly. Did we win? Ziri exhaled in relief. No, she said, but we're not dead either. Outside, the wind howled like a monster. Ziri opened the emergency hatch, cold air slapping her face. She pulled Jace out, draping his arm around her shoulders. The ice crunched under her boots as they stumbled toward a rock cave nearby. Behind them, the hunter ship landed. Doors opened. Lights searched. Ziri's pulse raced. They're sweeping for survivors, she said. If they find us, we won't get a second chance. Jace coughed and looked at her through blurry eyes. Then you go, he whispered. Leave me, I'll slow them down. Ziri stopped walking. Her jaw clenched, her voice sharp. Don't ever say that again. He blinked, confused. You saved me, she said. You gave me a name, a reason to keep breathing. You're not something I throw away. She pulled him tighter. And if we die together. They reached the cave and slid inside, hidden by ice and shadow. Ziri laid Jace down and covered the entrance with broken snow slabs. She reached into the rescue pack and activated a low heat field, just enough to keep him alive. Outside, footsteps crunched, voices echoed, distorted by wind. She couldn't survive that crash. One voice said, check the body. Another ordered Ziri, crouched in the shadows, gripping a sharp metal shard in one hand. If they entered, she'd fight. One last time, but then... A strange hum in the air. The enemy's voices grew tense, confused. What's that? It's not us. Who's interfering? Suddenly, a blinding white light filled the sky. The enemy ship's alarm screamed. Ziri peeked from the cave just in time to see it. Another ship, massive, unmarked, descending fast, and then fire. Laser bursts struck the hunter ship, disabling it instantly. The guards scattered, retreating, shouting, falling. The unknown ship landed softly. Its symbol glowed on the hull. Two hands locked together over a rising star, Zairi's breath caught. "I've seen that mark," she whispered. "It's the rebel fleet." A ramp lowered and a tall figure stepped out, wrapped in silver armor. She spoke through a voice amplifier. "Zairi of the Black Sun. You are not forgotten. We've come for you." Jace stirred weakly. Zairi took his hand and held it tight. "They followed your signal," he murmured. "No," she said, tears building in her eyes. "They followed hope." Zairi stood at the ramp of the rebel ship, her breath rising in soft clouds. The ice moon stretched behind her, broken and frozen like the past she'd just escaped. She held Jace close, his arm draped over her shoulder. He was weak, but breathing, alive. The rebel soldier who had called her name stood still, watching. She removed her helmet, revealing deep gray skin, glowing violet eyes, and a scar across her cheek. "You've grown," the woman said. "You were just a cadet when you vanished." Zairi blinked slowly, her mind still catching up. "I thought the rebellion was gone." "We hid," the woman said, "but we never stopped watching. And when we saw what you did, how you survived, we knew you were one of us." Zairi looked back toward the wrecked pod, then at Jace. "He's the reason I'm still standing." The soldier stepped forward and offered her hand. "Then bring him," she said. "You both have a place now." Inside the ship, warmth returned. The floors were smooth, clean, not stained with blood or rust like the station. Medical bots rushed in and carried Jace to the med bay. Zairi started to follow, but a voice stopped her. "Wait," said a soft elder tone. She turned to see a group of rebel leaders standing in a circle. They had heard the stories, seen the recordings from the escape, felt the ripple she caused. One stepped forward, an old alien with golden robes and quiet eyes. "You stood when they broke your name," he said. "You protected life when they demanded death. You remembered who you were, even when they tried to erase you." Zairi lowered her head slightly. "I remembered, because someone else believed I still mattered." "Then it is time to leave the past behind," the elder said. "We wish to offer you a new name." Zairi's breath caught in her throat. A name, not a label, not a title, not an insult. A name. She turned toward the med bay where Jace lay healing and whispered, "I already have one." The elder nodded. "What is it?" "Aya," she said. "He gave it to me. It means light." The room went quiet. Then every leader lowered their head in respect. Aya. Light in the dark, a flame that refused to go out. Days passed. Jace recovered slowly, his wounds healing. With each hour, Aya never left his side. He opened his eyes fully for the first time in the med bed, blinking at the soft lights. "You're still here," he whispered. "Of course I am," she replied. "You didn't think I'd let you leave after all that, did you?" He chuckled. "I thought you'd get tired of carrying me." "I carried pain heavier than you for years," she said. "You're easy." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jace reached out and touched her hand. Not like an order. Not like a chain, but like a friend, maybe something more so, he said. "What now?" Aya looked out the window of the rebel ship where stars moved slowly past. "Now we build something better," she answered. "A world where no one is owned, no one is broken. A world where kindness is stronger than power." "And what's your place in that world?" Jace asked. Aya thought for a moment, then smiled. "I used to be a weapon," she said. "But now, I want to be something more." Weeks later, Aya stood before a gathering of rebels, survivors, and freeborn from. Across the systems, she wore armor not for war, but for peace. Her symbol was not of rank, but of memory. A child's hand inside a soldier's etched into silver. She spoke with a calm voice. "Once, they gave me to a human as punishment," she said. "They thought it would break me. But he did not touch me in anger. He gave me food and warmth and silence without pain. He gave me back my name." The crowd listened, hearts heavy and full. She continued, "When someone shows you you're still alive, after everything, How do you repay them? You live. A cheer rose, soft and steady, the beginning of a new story, and somewhere in the crowd, Jace stood at the back, leaning on a cane. His eyes never left her, his smile quiet and proud. He had been a prisoner. Now he was the reason. A legend rose. That night, Aya and Jace sat under the open sky of a small rebel outpost, the stars above them endless. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I used to be afraid of silence, she whispered, because it meant someone was coming. And, now? He asked. Now it means peace, she replied. Because you're here. Jace looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the reflection of the woman she had become. Not a slave, not a soldier, not even a survivor, but a name. A light. Aya.